Who is God talking to when he says, be fruitful and multiply? What is the relationship God is talking about and their beliefs when he says, be fruitful and multiply? I heard Candace Owens speak at Liberty University Convocation, and she mentioned Bible verses, Bible scriptures. Now you've got my attention, and she said abortion is murder. She reminds me of my daughters. They are about the same age and very charismatic. I support Donald Trump and today the Republican Party. So I really like her and am fond of Candace Owens. I wished I could get us to look at scriptures on the topic of abortion. I also know the fear of some women concerning Kavanaugh as judge, Roe v. Wade. Without scriptures, it is logical to believe abortion is murder. Very logical. Scripturally, abortion is not murder, nor is it God's will for women. I'm sure that women would prefer not to be in a predicament to consider abortion. Abortion is the consequence, not the cause. To reduce abortion, people must be willing to go to the loving roles of a man and a woman in marriage. Have you really checked the scriptures as to when human life begins or when soul life begins? I have found the older I get that people with tears in their eyes, with solemn voices, go by how they feel God should be rather than studying the scriptures. They figure their feelings, their heart of holiness, is what God wants, even greater than the holy men of God that had to write the scriptures. They don't even check the scriptures. God has a verse for that. It's 1 John chapter 3, verse 20, when he says, God is greater than our heart, our feelings, and knoweth all things. I was listening to a guy where I work talking about this verse concerning men fighting. The wife tried to help, then in the progress gets attacked to the point she miscarries. Most kind of misread this section, but he read it correctly. And he could not figure out why that man did not get the death penalty. So he started changing the meaning of the word to fit his belief. We will go over that section of scriptures in Exodus chapter 21. But first, the words untimely birth in the Bible means abortion or miscarriage, untimely birth. The Hebrew word is nephel. One Hebrew word for the two English words, untimely birth. Let's go to the first usage, which usually gives you a greater understanding of the word and almost defines it like a dictionary. Something you should be taught if you go to any Bible study. So you can get what the word says, not commentary. The Bible is its own commentary. First usage, Job chapter 3, verse 16. Look at this verse. It defines it for you. Or as a hidden, untimely birth, I had not been. As infants which never saw light. I don't think you get any clearer. I had not been, that verse says. Conceived but never existed. The embryo would not have a record before God as a human life designated for heaven or hell. I had not been. Search and read the context of untimely birth in Job 3:16, Psalms 58:8, and Ecclesiastes 6:3. And we'll cover the one in Ecclesiastes 6:3 also. Let me show you some records on the death penalty before I get into this abortion record. In Deuteronomy 19:21, it says, and that eye shall not pity, but life shall go for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. And it says the eye shall not pity. In other words, if somebody commits murder, you don't pity them. The law was life for life. And they broke that. This is the context. The next verse is the context of the record we'll be reading. In Exodus 21:12, it says, he that smiteth a man that he die, that he die, shall be surely put to death. There is the death penalty. You can see from scriptures murder is met with the death penalty. Now let's read about the woman who loses the embryo. What happens to the man that caused the loss? In Exodus 21:22 to 23, we'll read the whole section first, then I'll have to go back and break it down for you, because I've seen many people try to twist it because they can't really believe what's there, because they go by this narrative all their life without reading. Exodus 21:22 to 22 and 23. If men strive, two men are fighting, and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, she jumps in, and the man attacks them both. If men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follow, that's key, he shall be surely punished, according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. And if any mischief follow, now the verse mentions mischief following, then thou shalt give life for life. Let's break this down. Now we got the word child there in the first part. I've got this verse down here so I can keep up with it. If men strive and hurt a woman with child, because he says she's with child, it's a child, it's a child. The word child, you know that when we call a pregnancy, you know another way we call a pregnancy, we say that she's expecting. She's expecting. We always speak of a pregnancy from an expectation point of view, right? The embryo, the child, it is scientifically an embryo if it is still in the womb. But we refer to it as child because we are always expecting her to have the child. So that's what this word child is here. Expecting. If a man strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her. Her fruit depart from her. You got to recognize that this is the miscarriage, a stillbirth, still, not even birth, still, dead. Genesis chapter 3 verse 2. Let's look at this fruit. Genesis chapter 30 verse 2. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel. She said, how come I don't have no child? How come I don't have no child? And so she went to Jacob and said, hold it. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel. And he said, am I God in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of thy womb? I'm just showing you how the word interprets itself. So we're talking about the fruit. Back in Exodus, the fruit departed from her. The fruit departed. A miscarriage, stillborn. Talking about Rachel. At this point, she is barren. She could not have a baby. She could not bring it to term. The fruit of the womb is the baby, a life. If the fruit departs, the embryo has departed or stillborn. The word depart is a good word. There is no human life yet, but there was growth life that died. Fruit departs. When it says fruit, that means come to full term. If it departs, it never comes to full term. All right. Back to Exodus, because they use that word, fruit departs. Fruit departs. The man causes her fruit to depart, causes her embryo to abort. Departs, departed. You would have thought this would have been mischief, and yet no mischief follows. Look at the verse. If men strive and hurt a woman with a child, so that her fruit departs from her, and yet no mischief follows, the fruit has departed, stillborn. She gets kicked, beat up, and miscarries. The fruit departs, stillborn. Then it says what happens to him. He shall be surely punished, according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. The Hebrew word is the word pay. Pay. The Hebrew word for pay is translated 1,087 times as give. The man will pay a fine to be determined by the judge. There's no determining if it is a life for life, because the law was already life for life. It's already written that. The death penalty, they will determine a monetary value. I did not write the book. The fruit departed. The man caused it because he beat her up. The fruit departed. And he pays a fine. You need a judge, though, to have him hung if it was life for life. But the judge determines that, well, pay. What's the pay? They hear the man goes in there, the husband goes before the judge, blah, 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 it's worth whatever. I hate to say it that way, but that's the way it was. And the judge will determine. Was it a boy? Was it a female? I know that doesn't sound right. When they used to get married, they had to give a dowry. The husband had to pay, I think, yes. So much because that family would lose that woman's help in that household. Go back and study some of this stuff. Okay. My point here is that abortion is not murder. The embryo does not have its own life yet. The growth life of the embryo is maintained by the mother. But at the same time, God is not for the cause that brings a woman to consider abortion. God is not for an abortion. But from a scriptural standpoint, the Bible speaks on when a baby will be recognized as having its own life, when soul life begins. You cannot see the soul life in a microscope. You can see the manifestation of soul life breathing. An embryo uses the oxygen from its mother. Then out of the womb, it takes its own first breath. The word in the Bible is called born. Also in the word is called breath life, living soul. Study this. Study the word, not your feelings. In Job 12:10, it says, in whose hand is the soul of every living thing and breath life of all mankind. I don't think I finished Exodus 21:22. We got to go back to it. Because it says, if men strive and hurt a woman with child so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follows. The embryo was lost. And the word says no mischief follows. Even though the embryo was lost. Then in 23 it says, and if any mischief follow, then thou shalt give life for life. If the woman dies because he beat her up, then life for life. But he wouldn't have got life for the embryo. He pays a monetary value. I didn't write the book. I didn't make all this up. Many young girls, for attention, end up pregnant in the heat of the moment. They don't want to get pregnant to consider abortion. God considers, if you want to blame somebody, God considers the first consummation husband and wife. Most of us broke those rules. So how innocent are we? If you are a Christian, you should understand God's main concern are those that want to know him, those that want to live with him in eternity. Now, if you look at this Ecclesiastes 6:3, you see, I'm not making this up. Ecclesiastes 6:3, if a man begot 100 children and lived many years, because that's the argument, 100 children and lived many years, so that the days of his years be many, and his soul be not filled with what good, and also he have no burial funeral, I say that an untimely birth is better than he. That's in Ecclesiastes. Yes, that's in Ecclesiastes. You want to rewrite the book? Go ahead. No matter what the laws are, God will get his people. So leave them alone, I say. Just don't mention it as Christians. Just teach the word. Teach people to love. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4. It says, according as he has chosen us in him before the foundations of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. As he has chosen us before the foundation, that's a little bit before conception. God knows who he's going to get. He already knows. So leave the laws alone. I'm not trying to say what I would do. If you see a woman who's pregnant, you can try to encourage her not to, but you don't tell her it's murder. It's not murder. I believe that a lot of this mental problems is because these women are going back in their minds when they hit 40 or something, believing they're murderers. They're not murderers. And 1 out of 3. So, anyway, that's a different subject. I don't want to get it. What if you kill off somebody who's going to be a believer? I just said, chosen before the foundation of the world. Let God do his business. By the way, angels came and informed Mary and Joseph about Jesus, didn't they? Joseph legally could have put her away if she was pregnant while they were engaged. So God had to tell him, did you know the seed follows the man? Why would you want, in some cases, a woman to give birth of that seed from that particular man? Depends on what happens and who they are. All through the scriptures, it is he begot. Yes, I'm pro-life. True pro-life is the word of God, which makes known the author of life, God our Father. So they take all the words. The key is have more righteous births. So life starts when the embryo takes its first breath. Abortion is not the will of God, but it is not murder. Let's have some families being fruitful and multiply. If you comment, if you disagree, use the verses and show me what they should mean in the light of your belief. A certain disciple.